What's up, YouTube peeps and barbecue freaks? Thank you guys for joining me for another edition of Tito Tuesdays. Now, if you're new to my channel, this is where you ask me a question, whether it's about barbecue or whatever you like, and I answer your questions. If you have a question that you would like me to answer, leave it in the comment section below this video, and I will answer it in the next Tito Tuesdays. You guys ready? Here. Hope you guys have a little bit of Tito's because it is Tito Tuesdays. Cheers. Oh, let's get started. All right, so first up is Cain. Cain says, and I hope I pronounced it right, Brother James, let's see, I actually have a question mainly about wood you use when smoking. I've heard many times that pitmasters use wood that is local to them. I live in central Pennsylvania and I have oak out here. Different woods have different flavors, and I know some are stronger than others. I've heard that oak is more mild taste compared to mesquite or even hickory. He just bought an offset and wants to know what's your opinion if oak is good, if oak is a good wood to burn. So Cain, yes, in Texas, so yeah, a lot of cookers will use wood that's local to the area because they can't they can't get certain woods. They may be able to get a lot of fruit woods, you know, if they're up north, or maybe even in the Midwest. And you know, down here in Texas, we get a lot of oak. That's the probably the number one wood that we use down here. We have access to a lot of like oak and pecan. So yes, cooks do use wood that is local to them. In my opinion, I think oak is one of the best woods you can use. That's my absolute favorite wood to use when I'm barbecuing. Now, I do like to, depending on what I'm cooking, I do like to change it up. Sometimes I like mesquite for beef. I love mesquite on like brisket, fajitas, maybe a steak, something like that. But I also love oak. Post oak in Texas is the number one wood that Texas is known for, just because it's so abundant down here that we have access to it. My favorite combination when it comes to wood, if I only had to pick one, would be oak and pecan. That's what I would probably use that on you know, whatever I'm cooking, if that's all I had. So my number one favorite combination is oak and pecan. Now, I do like hickory for chicken. So if I'm cooking chicken, I'll use some hickory, and I'll use some mesquite from time to time. You know, if I'm cooking around the house, I just, you know, a lot of people don't like mesquite because it's a really strong wood and can really overpower your meat. But if you use it right, if you burn it right, don't use too much, it's fine. I also like to use cherry wood on pork. I like the color and that, you know, that little sweetness that it gives it. But yes, oak is a really, really good wood to use. If I only had to pick one wood to cook with forever or for anything, it would definitely be oak. So yes, I'm a fan of oak wood, post oak wood. And, you know, really any of the oak woods, they're fairly the same. But in Texas, it's post oak. That's what I like to use. So I'm high on post oak. So I think that that's a good wood to burn. If that's all you can get, or if that's a main wood that you're able to get your hands on, I say go for it. You can't go wrong. So hope that answers your question. All right, next up is Giles Mitchell. He says, James, I saw in your last competition video that you brined your ribs ahead of time. I'm a big believer in brining, be it wet or dry. Was there a noticeable difference in the flavor and moistness of your ribs after brining? In your experience, what cut of meat do you find reacts best with the brine, be it wet or dry? Yes, Giles Mitchell, I definitely notice I definitely notice a difference in flavor and even in texture with the brine. Now, the brine that I use is designed to add, and I'm talking about, well, even for chicken, but ribs here, because that's what I used in the last video. But that brine that I used for the ribs was or is designed to add extra flavor into the meat and it definitely does that. Not only does it add flavor, but it has moisture in there. So I do notice a difference when I brine and when I don't brine. And I'll tell you this, I've been brining here lately in competitions, my ribs. I notice a huge difference in the tenderness of the ribs. Every time I brine, my ribs have always come out, well, the last few times that I brine, because I just started to really get into brining my ribs. The last few times that I've brined my ribs, they have come out probably, I don't know, I mean, they've never been this tender when I brine compared to when I haven't brined. So I'm a big believer in the brine that I'm using. That it definitely makes a flavor, or it definitely makes a difference in flavor for sure. And the texture has been, it's just been crazy. It really has helped my ribs be really tender and almost, and I cook mine to almost fall off the bone. And now, normally fall off the bone isn't a good thing. I mean, it sounds good, but fall off the bone really means overcooked. However, down here in Texas, the way that they judge ribs is they take a plastic knife and they just cut the meat right off the bone. So you almost have to take that rib to you almost have to overcook it. So that way it is almost fall off the bone. So it's easier for them to take that plastic knife and cut the meat right off. Unlike KCBS, where they actually pick up the rib and take a bite. Now, if I was doing KCBS, I probably wouldn't brine as long. I'd probably still brine for the flavor. I wouldn't brine as long though. But, you know, they actually pick up the rib, take a bite of it. You do not want to fall off the bone or anywhere near that for something like KCBS. But down here, I cook them to almost fall off the bone. So I have noticed that every time I've used that brine, that it's really helped my ribs when it comes to the tenderness. So I'm a big believer in the brine. What cuts of meats do I think react best with the brine? I think chicken reacts best with the brine. I've always brined my chickens, and every single time they have come out extremely moist. I won't cook ribs, at least in a competition setting. I will not cook ribs without brining. At home, I don't brine because, you know, that's just a different, I'm aiming for a different outcome there. But in competitions, I think that chicken takes on brine best. Now, I've never used a dry brine, so let me make that clear. I've always used a wet brine, so I don't know how dry brines work. I don't know how well they work. I've only used a liquid dry brine, but I think chicken is the one meat that takes it on the best. And again, I always brine my chickens for competitions, and it just makes a huge difference. So hope that answers your question. All right, last up, KTown Fishing. Thank you for the question. It says, how do you price out catering events, and how do you know how much meat to purchase? So anytime I'm doing a catering event, I always charge by the meat. And so what I mean is, like, one brisket will feed about 15 to 20 people. So, you know, if they're wanting a quote for, let's say, 100 people, I'm going to tell them 5 briskets. And I charge a certain amount per brisket. So right now I'm charging $90 per brisket, and I actually should be charging a lot more, but I don't have the overhead that a lot of people have, so I'm able to come in lower. Doesn't mean you're getting a cheaper product, because my product's a lot better than most, in my opinion. However, so like if we're talking brisket, I could say, you know, one brisket will feed about 20 people. If they're wanting 100, I'll tell them anywhere from 5 to 6 briskets, you know, just depending on if they want extra. And then I charge, you know, $90 per brisket. So, you know, 5 or 6 briskets times 90. And that's how I get the cost for my brisket. When it comes to chicken, I do it $3 per chicken, per piece of chicken. And it's usually leg quarters. So I charge $3 per leg quarter. If they want, you know, 100 leg quarters, that's $300, and that's how I determine the price for that. When it comes to ribs, I always say you get at least 10 bones per rack. So if they're wanting, you know, enough for 100, depending on how many ribs they're wanting for each person, you're looking at 10 bones. You're looking at 10 racks for 100 people, and then if they're wanting double that, you're looking at 20 racks, 2 bones per person. And there's always a little bit extra in there just in case. But that's how I do it. Some people I know do, like a quarter pound of meat per person. You could do it that way also. A lot of people do a quarter pound per person. The only reason I don't do that right now is because not every brisket is the same size. So once I trim my brisket and cook my brisket, I can buy a 15-pound brisket, but I can't, take a quarter pound out of that 15 pounds because one, I'm going to trim it down. So when I do that, I'm already trimming off about 3 pounds of weight. And then when you cook it, you lose quite a bit also. So, restaurants can kind of do that a little easier because they can make more, and then whatever they don't sell for the catering gig, can kind of go to a restaurant. That's why I don't do it that way. I just charge per brisket. And again, it's just, like I said, one brisket, in my opinion, will feed 15 to 20 people. And the way I cut my brisket, I slice it up all the way, and then I cut it down the middle. So I'm able to feed that many. That's how I determine my price for catering. Again, keep in mind that I'm not a restaurant, so I don't have the overhead that some of these places have, and they've got to kind of take that into consideration. So I'm able to do it a little differently, but that's how I do it. All right, I think I said that was the last question. There's actually one more. And this is from John Smith. He says, currently he's saving for a Lone Star. He's from Texas, born and raised. Nothing beats a good stick burner for flavor. I agree with that, brother John. He says, I've always preferred beginners to the 22-inch Weber kettle as a starter. What would your advice be for someone just starting out? And what do you think of the Lone Star Grillz? So John, I'm a huge fan of the 22-inch Weber kettle. In my opinion, that is one of the most versatile grills you can have. That is one that I also recommend to beginners. You could smoke on it, you could grill on it, and usually for beginners, they're not trying to cook a ton of meat, so it's the perfect size for their families. So I always recommend either the 22-inch Weber kettle or the 22-inch Weber Smoky Mountain. Those are the two that I recommend. I love the Weber kettle. I think it is a great cooker. I think it does a great job, a great job grilling and smoking. So I'm with you. That is one that I would recommend also. What do I think of a Lone Star Grillz? I think they're great. While I don't own one, I've cooked on several. Brother Troy over at T-Roy Cooks has one. Justin from Baby Back Maniac, and I've been able to to see how cooks come out on both of those, and they're phenomenal. I would love to own a Lone Star Grillz. Hey, Lone Star Grillz, if you're watching, holler at a Mexican. I'm just kidding. I think they're great grills. Like I said, I've cooked on them many times at Troy's house, and they've always produced a phenomenal product. I like them. I don't have anything negative to say about them. Again, I think they're great grills. And maybe I'll have one in the future. I really need to get me, I had an offset smoker, I sold it. As soon as I did, I regretted it. So I would really like to get me a offset smoker for the house soon. So that might be one of them. Hopefully, I think the Lone Star's a great grill. So anyway, you guys, thank you for joining me. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Again, if you have a question, leave it below. I will answer it in the next Tito Tuesday video. And if you hadn't, please hit that subscribe button and give me a thumbs up. I would truly appreciate it. Thank you guys for joining me today. I will see you guys next time. Take care.